Hello guys, this is your friend and we are back with a new fanfic. Which is what if Naruto awakes the rinnegan when he was bringing back Sasuke after retrieval mission part 2. And if you enjoy this fanfic then please press the like button and subscribe to my channel for more fanfic like this. And now let's start the fanfic. My name is Pain. Deep inside the Temple of Whirling Tides a large group of hostages were all tied up along the circular walls of the Grand Dome room. Large cries of panic and anger erupted amongst the crowd of people as two individuals walked into the room wearing black cloaks adorned with red clouds. The pair walked around the circular room examining their captured bait. It took me over 2 hours to tie all of these people up. This kid better be here soon, Kisame complained as he looked around the room annoyed. So Itachi-sama, you really think this will work? The fierce-looking shark Nin asked his superior. Itachi looked around with a bored look on his face. Well, if our informant from Konoha is correct, the Nine-Tails Jinchuriki is compassionate about protecting people, and I believe he would blindly rush in trying to save hostages. Kisame nodded at Itachi's response before asking, who is this informant of yours? Itachi had a slight smirk on his face as he looked over to Kisame. You'll never guess this right, so I'll spare you the trouble. Kisame had an eager look of anticipation waiting for Itachi to say the name. I won't mention it in front of all these people, so ask me later. Kisame started laughing. Wow, the suspense is killing me. How have these idiots in Konoha not found the informant yet? Itachi shrugged as he lost interest in the conversation. A young boy glaring at Kisame with intensity shouted loudly, don't talk about Konoha Nin like that. They are welcomed heroes around here and can kick your butts. He stopped in front of the boy and stared him down. So boy, you think you're some kind of tough guy Kisame laughed as he towered over the child with a twisted smile. My name is Inari, and I'm not afraid of nothing or nobody. The boy's resolve attracted the attention of all present around him. Itachi turned around and stood next to Kisame with a slight frown on his face. You have so much to learn about the world, kid. Your parents should have taught you rule number 1 about a hostage situation: don't be a hero. Kisame then backhanded the boy with enough force to send him into the wall. Inari hit the wall and lost consciousness as blood poured from his swollen mouth. Gasps of horror and shock filled the room once again as Kisame began to laugh. Itachi rolled his eyes with an uninterested look on his face. How dare you do that to my grandson? I know people who can bring you to justice, you monsters. A man shouted from a short distance away. Kisame's grin broke into a dazzling chuckle as he took his sword off his back. No, Kisame, ignore them. These people are feeble and weak, and their empty threats only veil their fear. Back to the matter at hand. When the Nine Tails arrives, you will need to drain its chakra while I subdue it with my Sharingan. Kisame requipped his sword as he shook his head. He's only a genin, Itachi-sama, I doubt it'll be that hard to bring him down. Itachi's face lit up in frustration as he glared at Kisame. Toby told us not to mess up the plan. Our underestimating him was the problem to begin with, Kisame. Toby says that it will be near impossible to defeat the Nine Tails without him if it has a full transformation. Kisame met Itachi's glare with a shrug. I doubt that we'll reach that point. All we gotta do is knock the kid out in some genjutsu, drain his chakra, and haul him back to the meeting point. Itachi held his head dejectedly as he sighed. At any rate, the hostages will eventually lure him here, and we can apprehend him then. Kisame nodded once again, halfway tuning out Itachi as he examined the temple. So Itachi-sama, you said he's the last member of this clan. The Uchiha glanced around for a moment, admiring the unique architecture, as he focused on the statue of a woman on the far wall. Yes, it would seem so. I wouldn't doubt if he came here seeking his clan seal. Its origins are a mystery to even myself, but I heard that one must possess the bloodline to acquire it. Tazuna sat quietly listening to the conversation of his captors. The only clan that ever existed here was the Uzumaki, but who could they be talking about? He wondered as he searched his memory for clues. Suddenly a flashback hit him as he remembered a certain blonde-haired kid, Naruto, I can't believe I didn't realize he was a remnant of the clan. I wonder if these two are trying to capture Naruto or somebody else though. As if he read Tezuna's mind, Kisame wandered over to Tezuna with another grin. So, it looks like we have an eavesdropper over here, Itachi-sama. How would you like to go for a swim, old man? Kisame practically giggled as horror swept through the large crowd of individuals. Suddenly a woman spoke up in a pleading tone, "We are simple people. Most of us here are fishermen, farmers, or carpenters, and we don't want anything to do with your shinobi politics or wars." Itachi walked to the woman's location with a massacre written on his face. Everything you believe is a mockery of the truth. Safety is a lie, peace is an illusion, and hatred is eternal. As the seeds of corruption grow in the hearts of all people, wars shall always erupt in a never-ending cycle of damnation. The woman had a terrified look on her face as Itachi activated his Mangekyo Sharingan. "Look into my eyes and see the truth." The woman began to scream in pure terror as visions raced through her mind. "What are you doing to my daughter, Tsunami, you sick fuck?" Tezuna roared in rage before getting knocked down by Kisame. The woman finally fell over practically half dead, keyword half dead. She didn't die, as Itachi's eyes went back to normal. "So much for ignoring them, Itachi-sama. Shit, and you think I'm being too hard on them? That could qualify as torture." Kisame laughed as he and Itachi began to walk to the center of the room. Tezuna began to shout angrily at them, "You'll pay for this, I swear. My daughter didn't deserve that." Itachi simply disregarded the man as he said, "People like her are poison to their own societies. Encouraging weakness among each other only makes them more susceptible to violence and war. These people don't understand that strong nations don't care if they are weak civilians, they will trample those who are too weak to protect themselves." Kisame nodded at Itachi's logic. "Yeah, I suppose that's true in the long run. Those too weak to protect themselves shouldn't be around those who can. None of them understand the measures that are acceptable in war." The people present were all cowering with their faces down, not daring to look up at the two. "So Itachi-sama, which one of the hostages is going to be the first sacrifice?" The Uchiha looked around with a disgusted look on his face. "No point in making martyrs out of any of them. I would prefer not to kill these people. Maybe this experience will make them stronger." Kisame gave the Uchiha a strange look. "You're too good for your own good, Itachi-sama." Suddenly a loud noise came from outside and drew the attention of all present. A large explosion blew the door open to the temple and a lone figure walked in. Kisame shot his gaze over to the commotion in excitement and looked upon the figure for a moment. Due to the darkness of the night he could only make out the shadowy outline of a spiky-haired individual. Itachi was staring at the figure as well. Suddenly the figure began to open its eyes as a silvery glow outlined in purple shot out of them. Kisame's jaw nearly hit the floor as he gasped in disbelief at the teenager walking into the room. The cold dark gaze of his eyes made Kisame feel uneasy as he looked over to Itachi for some kind of explanation. The Uchiha himself simply stared at the young man in complete shock. "The rinnegan, Kisame, why did you insist on jinxing us with this?" The shark nin merely hung his jaw open as the figure walked closer to the two. "Fuck my life. So, you two were clearly interested in finding me, might I ask why? Are you assassins perhaps, or do you want to capture me?" Naruto asked as he stood across from the two Akatsuki nin in the center of the room. Itachi spoke up. "We have been tracking you ever since you left Konoha, and have every intention of capturing you." Naruto glanced at the figure which strongly resembled Sasuke. The orange-haired nin smiled as he retorted, "So you must be Itachi, Sasuke's brother. Am I right? And you are." He looked over to the shark nin as well, expecting some kind of introduction. Kisame frowned as he looked over to Itachi, waiting for a K to attack. "I am Kisame, a former swordsman of the mist." The Uchiha made a quick glance in his direction and he nodded. Kisame suddenly unwrapped his sword as he began to circle Naruto slowly. Itachi's Mangekyo Sharingan activated soon after and he glared into Naruto's eyes. The young man found himself enveloped in an ocean of kunai slashing, stabbing, and cutting him as blood rained upon him. A large pair of red pinwheel eyes was all he could see as he looked up in a desperate attempt to identify where he was. His eyes began to sting painfully as he flew out of the kunai with red chakra surrounding him. Itachi's form came into focus as he attempted to subdue Naruto. Then the ocean of blades turned into fire that burned over his body. However, the fire soon changed into red chakra as the form of a fox attacked Itachi. He found himself locked in a prison of chakra as Naruto's vision began to glow brighter and bring him back to his senses as broke the vision Itachi had placed him in. Naruto broke free of Itachi's Sharingan and barely avoided the force of a large sword smashing down in front of him. He broke free Kisame, Itachi stated as the shark nin began to swing his sword in a flurry attempting to hit the rinnegan wielder. Yeah, no shit, Kisame replied irritated. All hell broke loose as Kisame began assault as the Jinchuriki in a death match. The orange-haired nin drew his kunai. The Uchiha watched Kisame and Naruto fight with an interest. The Jinchuriki moved with incredible speed, parrying and dodging all of the former mist nin's attacks. How the fuck is this guy so fast? Kisame yelled as rage coursed through him. Kisame began to take things more seriously as he went through hand seals, Sweden, Bakusui Shoha. Water release. Exploding water colliding wave. Suddenly a large wave of water erupted from Kisame's mouth as he blasted the room full of water. Naruto laughed as he went through a series of hand seals, Sweden, Suiryuden no Jutsu, water release, water dragon bullet technique. Suddenly a large dragon formed out of the water Kisame had created. It began to trash about in the temple, attacked Kisame with great speed. The former mist nin fought it back and dodged most of its attacks before absorbing it into his sword. The shark nin laughed as it blasted back from his sword and blew Naruto along with half of the temple out with it. Kisame rode the crashing wave of water down to strike once again. Naruto quickly regained his composure as he dodged Kisame's overhead smash. The former mist nin began to swing his sword in a whirlwind and water started to gather around him. The vortex of water surrounded the two, making Kisame laugh. Try and escape now, kid. Samahata hungers for your chakra. Itachi watched intently as Kisame began to unleash one of his aces. Naruto panted as he avoided the relentless flurry of Kisame's sword. The shark nin's superhuman strength made it tiresome to counterattack his blows. A large vortex of water began to go faster and grow smaller. Naruto circled Kisame as the area they were in began to shrink, then limiting his room to dodge Kisame's attacks. Kisame laughed as water began to imprison them. Sweden, Goshuku Zame. 5 man-eating sharks. Suddenly Naruto felt the water's pressure suck him down as 5 large sharks made of chakra began to swim at him. He growled as his eyes once again burned in pain. He held up his hand, Shinra Tensai. The sharks collided with an unseen shield and were repelled away by an invisible blast, much to Kisame's surprise. Naruto shot out of the water like a bullet and felt the familiar red chakra envelop him as he stood at the water's surface facing Kisame and Itachi. The remaining front entrance of the temple was demolished, allowing some of the villagers to escape and free each other. Several tried to catch a glance at the fight, but only saw an ominous red glow beginning to radiate through a dense fog that had just appeared. The water began to freeze, suddenly confusing Kisame greatly as he noticed 2 figures standing next to Naruto upon the misty ice-covered surface. The shark nin halted his assault upon this sight and had a grim look on his face. Itachi-sama, apparently this guy has friends. The Uchiha tried to identify the 2 rescuers and noticed a slashed mist headband on one and a hunter nin mask on the other. He glacked over at Kisame, assuming the former mist nin knew their identities. Kisame took a closer look at the 2 newcomers with a surprised laugh. Zabuza, it can't be. I thought you were dead. The masked swordsman simply leered at him as he drew his blade and faced Kisame. Normally I'd be happy to see you, but I can't allow you to harm my master. Kisame frowned in disapproval. Your master? You would disregard all those years we spent killing together for this kid? Zabuza laughed as he drew his sword. We don't play for the same team anymore. Haku and I serve our lord, Pain, now. Kisami's face broke into a scowl. You always did like doing things the hard way. I figured one day I would eventually kill you. Zabuza, Haku, you two deal with Kisame. Itachi is mine. Naruto roared as the two nin began to assault Kisame mercilessly. Itachi and Naruto stared each other down once again as Kisame began to duel Zabuza in a fencing display of power and speed. The mighty blades crashed into each other, creating monstrous chakra spikes as water, ice and earth exploded everywhere. Suddenly Haku began to freeze the area around Kisame, rooting his feet in place, allowing Zabuza the upper hand to knock him off balance. Kisame began to go through several hand seals, Sweden, Bakusui Shoha. Water erupted from his mouth once again and it blasted at Zabuza but was immediately frozen. Mirrors of ice surrounded the two and Senbon needles rained into Kisami's back as he parried Zabuza's overpowering swing. Shit, I can't take him as long as that bitch is freezing all of my water attacks and shooting me in the back. Kisame thought as he glanced around at the icy mirrors. He tried to smash one but his sword was deflected by Zabuza's. Ice needles shot out of the mirrors from all angles at Kisame once again. He made a quick counterattack to block them but felt Zabuza's sword slash his back. The shark nin's body dissipated into a water clone as the real Kisame whirled his blade around, smashing several of the ice mirrors. Ice froze his entire body in place as he landed. Zabuza took the opportunity to continue his assault, leaving Kisame defenseless against the overhead cleave that cut down his chest. He channeled the chakra from his sword, quickly trying to regenerate as he glanced over to Itachi's battle. The Uchiha had a pissed look on his face as his Sharingan activated once again. Since you are too much trouble to defeat by any physical means, let's see how you deal with this. Itachi snapped. Black flames suddenly erupted around Naruto, constricting him in agonizing heat. He fell to his knees as the flames began to burn hotter. Amaterasu is more than sufficient to defeat you, Itachi stated with a dead serious look on his face. The ice around him instantly melted and he fell underwater. The black flames suppressed Naruto and his chakra as they continued to burn him into submission. He tried to hold his breath as he sank deeper into the water. The burning agony feels good, doesn't it? Turn your pain into rage. The Kyuubi roared with thundering anger in Naruto's mind as he felt a surge of adrenaline flow through him. The pain, it's unbearable. I don't think I can last much longer. Release all of your power from your chakra points now. Feel your power within, unleash it with mine and dispel these flames. Naruto began to focus on his chakra points, which still suppressed most of his power. The Jinchuriki's vision began to go black as a supernova of chakra exploded from his body, Shinra Tensei. The force of the attack exploded violently, consuming the black flames and causing a massive tsunami of water to blast out of the water as Naruto flew out of it, blasting Itachi and the others back in the process. Naruto going Super Saiyan. Lol. JK. Kisame, Zabuza, and Haku halted their fight as they witnessed two chakra wings emerge from Naruto's back. He flew high into the air and a slit formed in his rinnegan eyes as they began to glow red. Use your power to annihilate everything. Let my chakra feed your rage. Itachi and Kisame looked up in awe as Naruto began to channel his chakra. Suddenly Zabuza and Haku were covered in red chakra as well. Kisame had a look on his face that resembled a deer caught in the headlights as Zabuza smashed his sword into Kisame, sending him flying away with a large hole through his chest. The two nin turned their attention back skyward. Haku and Zabuza only stared at their leader as they felt his power surge. A strange echo was heard in Naruto's mind. Chibaku Tensei, show them the true power of the rinnegan. The Jinchuriki obeyed the voice without question, much to Kyuubi's confusion. Chibaku Tensei. Planetary devastation, heavenly body bursting from the earth. What are you doing? How do you know about that jutsu? Kyuubi roared in Naruto's mind. The teenager glared at Itachi and Kisame with killer intent. Suddenly everything began to rise from the ground, ripping the landscape apart. Water, Earth and ice began to float towards Naruto, forming into a large ball. Pieces of the half-demolished temple rose as well. Kisame gave Itachi a desperate look as he got up and back away from Zabuza and Haku. The four missing nin felt themselves being sucked into the massive ball. They jumped down fast trying to escape it. We are not equipped to take this guy down, Itachi-sama. I say we get the hell out of here. The Uchiha only nodded in shock as he and Kisame began to fear the large ball forming in the sky. The two began to run at inhuman speed away from the scene, but Naruto channeled his jutsu harder, trying to suck them back in. Painful rage burned in his blood as the ball began to grow. Haku and Zabuza were beginning to get higher and higher as well, much to their shock. Finally he was stopped by Haku. No, Naruto-kun, it's over, let them go for now. You're going to kill us. He looked at her face for a moment and sighed in relief as he felt his anger and his chakra slowly retreat, allowing two figures to escape into the distance. He finally released the jutsu, causing earth and water to rain down upon the devastated remnants of the battlefield. He soon returned to normal as he landed and was embraced into a hug by Haku. You had me worried, Naruto-kun. How? I don't understand how you did that. Answer me now. Naruto tuned the fox out as he focused his attention to his followers. Zabuza let out a breath he had been holding as the rest of the Naruto's jutsu finished raining down. Zabuza thought to himself about how powerful he felt when he was with Naruto. When he turned red, I felt all of my chakra replenish, despite it mostly being drained by Kisame's sword. And what the fuck was that shit he just did? Damn, with him leading us we can rule the world. Zabuza thought as he stared at his leader. Naruto finally regained his normal demeanor as he sat down against a large rock. So what did those guys want with me? He asked as he looked over to Zabuza. The masked swordsman thought for a moment. You know, I've heard of those two before, Naruto-sama. They're part of a terrorist organization known as Akatsuki. Naruto glanced over at Zabuza with a questioning look. Akatsuki. Well, I suggest we avoid them in the future. They all nodded in unison. Haku glanced at Naruto for a moment and sighed. These villagers are going report this to Konoha. Maybe it would be a good idea to wear a mask, Naruto-kun. Thankfully for him, none of the villagers could make out his face in the dark temple earlier. He glanced over at the masked girl and nodded before focusing his attention to Zabuza. The masked swordsman looked at him for a minute before he sighed. I think I have a spare black mask. I suppose it would be a good idea to cover up your face. He began to sort through his personal belongings in a recently acquired pack and pulled out a mask similar to Kakashi's. Don't laugh at my cliché mask. Here you go, Naruto-sama. Excellent thinking, by the way, Haku. The girl nodded as she watched Naruto put on his mask. He laughed to himself at the thought of resembling his old sensei. Yeah, good idea, Haku-chan. It'll cover up my whisker marks, which will completely shroud my identity from them. Since I have a different hair color and eyes now, they won't notice. Zabuza looked around for a moment, lost in thought. Maybe we should get out of here before a platoon of Anbu show up and force us to butcher them. Naruto frowned for a moment as he looked at Zabuza. I still need my clan seal in that temple. Supposedly the scroll on how to do it is locked away in its main vault. Unanimous agreement echoed as they began to make their way back into the temple. Looks of distress and terror marked the faces of the villagers who noticed the trio emerging from the mist. They made their way back inside the half-demolished temple, avoiding looks they received from the terrified villagers. One man looked at Zabuza and almost started to cry. By the gods! The demon of the mist has returned. Zabuza shot the man a death glare, making him back away swiftly. Naruto looked around at the people who all were staring at him. Many of them were cowering when he made eye contact. He looked around at the mostly freed villagers and spoke in deadly tone. I suggest all of you leave before you die. Zabuza began to laugh as he chimed in. Bow before pain and the demon of the mist. Many villagers present began to run away in fear as Haku let out a brief sigh at Zabuza's over-the-top ego. Naruto felt a small smile come to his face at the mention of his false name. As the remaining villagers all fled the temple, Naruto glanced at a statue of a woman. He walked closer to it and read the name on it, Mito Uzumaki. He looked at the statue for a moment trying to identify who the woman was. He finally sighed as he walked away from it and down a hallway followed on each side by Zabuza and Haku. Naruto at last came to a dark corridor leading downstairs into a dark room. He picked up a torch on a nearby wall and set it on fire as they wandered further in. At the very back of the room Naruto found a large chest with a super complicated lock on it. He handed the torch to Haku who held it over for him. He read the inscription, "To open the chest, a true member must channel his chakra through the lock." The Jinchuriki laughed quietly about how simple something such as this would be. Guess they figured nobody in the clan had any mind to steal it anyways, he thought as he began to open the chest. The locks undid themselves as his chakra flowed over the chest for several minutes. Finally the chest opened and Naruto began to examine its contents. Haku and Zabuza quietly watched him go through the several scrolls inside the chest as he searched for his clan seal. He found it after a few minutes and read the instructions. To place the clan seal on a member, one must first have a large chakra pool and have the clan bloodline to ensure survival, otherwise the seal is fatal. He laughed to himself at the thought of somebody like Orochimaru finding this and killing himself accidentally. Speaking of which, I still need to kill him at some point. The teen's mind sidetracked for a moment before he continued reading. The clan seal allows the user to weave chakra and temporarily augment their weapons of even bodies with it. The seal amplifies all elemental jutsu. To acquire the seal one must unleash their chakra in the heart of the maelstrom outside of the temple. To prove one's worth, he or she must overpower nature itself. If they are deemed worthy, the gods shall bless them with the Uzumaki seal of ascendance. Below the instructions listed the names of every clan member to acquire the seal. Only 50 names were on it. No wonder nobody has heard of this seal. Naruto sighed as he reread the scroll before he finally placed it back inside the chest. He continued to search it for anything of value, and he finally found something very interesting. He pulled it out of the chest and stared at it. An Uzushiogakure Hite Ite, Whirlpool Village headband, or something close to that. Naruto tied the forehead protector around his head and turned to his two followers. They both gave him an approving nod. He smiled underneath his mask before he spoke, "Guys, I am going for a swim." The two missing nin focused their attention on their leader and followed him as he began to walk up the stairs outside of the temple's back entrance. They looked down and saw a huge whirlpool at the base of the cliff edge the temple was on. Haku took off her mask and gave a worried look to Naruto as he began to take his gear off and his shirt. "Don't tell me you actually intend to go into that," she gasped as he walked to the edge of the cliff. Zabuza sat down and took a deep breath as he and Haku only saw the faint orange blur of their leader diving into the whirlpool. "He knows what he's doing, Haku, he'll be okay." She gave him a concerned look before sitting down next to him. "I hope so." Meanwhile, Naruto had just landed in the freezing cold water and tried to get to the surface as his body spun out of control in the maelstrom. He focused his chakra into his feet and propelled himself upon the surface of the moving water and felt intense pressure as he attempted to walk to its center. Each step felt like it would suck him down to the sea floor. He slowly but surely made progress to the center, and upon finally reaching it he felt his entire body starting to crush from the force of the pressure. Haku and Zabuza saw an orange blur in the center from where they were and only gaped in wide wonder. "That guy never ceases to amaze me," Zabuza said as he intently watched the orange-haired shinobi channel his chakra at the center of the maelstrom. Haku stared at him and felt her heart throb. "He's incredible." Naruto almost lost himself in his concentration to keep his chakra controlled as he focused harder. More poured out of his body as he channeled all of it into the whirling tide. The water surrounding him began to merge with his chakra and then glowed in a blinding display of power. Naruto got pulled down into the maelstrom of chakra and felt his entire body overcome by a strange tingling feeling. He felt the chakra in the water around him and began to alter its direction, reversing the flow of the whirlpool. After a full minute of rotating in its counter direction, the maelstrom was completely dissipated. Naruto emerged from it and ran up the cliff to meet his companions once more. They both looked at him in awe as they saw his skin glowing radiantly before finally returning to normal. I got what I came for. Let's leave this place, the orange-haired teen spoke as he put his gear back on. Explain to me how that got you a clan seal. Haku asked as she intently watched him re-equip his gear. Naruto turned around and replied, by mastering nature I created my own seal. This was some kind of test for all of the most powerful Uzumaki clan members. I didn't realize that we must each create our own seals until I did that for myself. Haku and Zabuza both looked over the edge of the cliff in shock that the whirlpool was gone. Zabuza looked at him for a moment as if he was about to say something but finally closed his mouth. Haku licked her lips as he motioned for them to follow him. He's so powerful and in control all the time. Fuck, is that hot? Oh, the things I would do to you, Naruto-kun, Haku thought as the trio silently began to leave the temple. Zabuza glanced over at Haku for a moment and smirked as he noticed the look on her face. I bet she won't be the only woman who wants to have your kids, Zabuza laughed to himself as he looked over at his leader. Naruto heard the familiar growl in his mind as Kyuubi began to interrupt his thoughts. Despite your lack of resolve, you have been impressing me lately, Kit. I have no idea how you did that jutsu earlier. Maybe you have no idea either, but at any rate, you might just earn my respect one day. Naruto acknowledged Kyuubi's comment. Like you said, with your power and mine, I'll be a god. The demon fox laughed in Naruto's mind in a chorus of delight as they continued. A long distance away in the forest, two cloaked men sat against a tree and stared at the sky. Itachi-sama, explain to me how we just got our asses handed to us, Kisame whined as his body continued to regenerate from the wounds inflicted by Zabuza and Haku. The Uchiha simply stared at the moon, lost in thought. Kisame continued to rant. Those two friends of his died over 2 years ago, Itachi-sama. I saw their graves when we arrived at that village. Something wasn't right about that. Zabuza was one of my closest friends back when I was tight with the 7 swordsmen of the mist. I had heard of the rinnegan's power, but I never imagined it could do that. Itachi sulked in his depression as he responded to Kisame. This is a worst-case scenario far beyond anything I could have ever imagined. And now he probably has his clan seal too. We are not going to try fighting him again unless we have Madara-sama. Kisame nodded in agreement as he rested his head back against the tree trunk. What was that jutsu he did that sucked everything in? Itachi gazed into the distance as if he was half asleep. That was one of the Rakudo Sennin's most powerful jutsus. There's no way I'm going against that again. Of course it was on a smaller scale, but the fact of the matter is he can do it as well. How in the world did you not know he had the rinnegan, Itachi-sama? Weren't you tracking him? Itachi thought about the question for a moment. No, Kyuubi's Jinchuriki is named Naruto. He had blonde hair, blue eyes, and whisker marks according to our informant. He might have recently developed it, maybe that's how he eluded us before. Kisame frowned. You said his name was Naruto. They referred to him as Pain. We might as well call him that too, Itachi said. Kisame gave him a questioning look and asked, why should we do that? The Uchiha relied, for the sake of covering his tracks, and our own for when the Konoha Anbu come scouring this place 2 days from now. Silence passed for a few minutes before Itachi gave Kisame a brief glance and sighed. I don't think Madara-sama will like to hear that the Kyuubi's Jinchuriki is a rinnegan wielder who is the son of the 4th Hokage and the last descendant of one of the most powerful clans ever known. Kisame had a sad look on his face. I have this strange feeling that we're going to go through disciplinary punishment for this. Itachi closed his eyes in distress at the thought of Madara making an example out of them in front of the rest of Akatsuki. Well, let's get this over with. Call him now Itachi-sama. Kisame groaned as Itachi went through several hand seals to alert their leader to show up. A shadow teleported directly in front of them and was silent as the one red eye shined through the swirled orange mask. Madara looked at Itachi and Kisame quietly awaiting their report. Madara-sama, we couldn't apprehend the nine tails. There was a certain complication involved. Itachi began as the figure continued to stare at him. We set a trap for him at the old temple in Wave, but we couldn't subdue him by any means. He broke free of my Mangekyo Sharingan and, well, we had a large battle that resulted in his friends showing up and us getting out. We weren't trying to kill him, but we got overwhelmed and had no choice but to retreat. The masked man continued to silently gaze at Itachi and he took off his mask. His ethereal face gave the two nin a look with curious interest. Finally he spoke. Broke free from your Sharingan, care to elaborate, Itachi? The younger Uchiha sighed as he held his head down in submission once again. He has the rinnegan, he outmaneuvered a lot of our techniques. After my Amaterasu failed to subdue him, he unleashed a surge of chakra and performed a Chibaku Tensai on us and we fled from him. Madara's eyes shot open and much to Itachi and Kisame's surprise he began to smile. It must have been beautiful. You two fools are very lucky to be alive. He must have spared you if you were able to outrun that jutsu. Madara was grinning as if he was the happiest man on the planet. Itachi and Kisame traded confused glances as Madara began to pace excitedly. I must meet him. What is his name? Itachi answered swiftly. His name is Pain. Madara laughed to himself. Pain. I can't wait to meet him. Kisame had a puzzled look on his face as Madara put his mask back on. You two leave the nine tails alone for the time being. I have great plans for him. By the way, Zetsu also told me that this Pain used a demonic barrier to elude you two the first time, so I suppose your incompetence wasn't to blame for that. Your new orders are to report to base so we can have a meeting with the others. I'll have Zetsu keep an eye on Pain in the meantime and report any of his movements to me. Kisame bluntly asked, what plans could you possibly have for somebody like that, Madara-sama? The Uchiha looked at Kisame and practically giggled as he replied, the nine tails sealed within a rinnegan wielder, makes me excited just thinking about it. Eventually our paths will cross and this Pain will kneel before me. And with his power subjugated to my will the stagnant shinobi nations shall tremble and fall as I become the herald to their annihilation and assume the throne of darkness. Madara disappeared after his speech, leaving a disturbed pair of missing nin who stared at each other for a full minute. Sometimes, I get this feeling that Madara-sama is slightly crazy, Kisame chuckled as Itachi began to frown. I wouldn't doubt it if Pain kills him. Kisame shot Itachi a surprised look. I wouldn't go around saying things like that, Itachi-sama, otherwise he might impale me with my own sword and, fuck, I'd hate to think what he'd do to you. I think he has some homoerotic fantasies about you. Itachi laughed for the first time ever after Kisame finished his sentence. Yeah, I would prefer if he kept that directed elsewhere. Besides, I'm sure he's in love with Pain, judging by how excited he was. Kisame began to laugh hysterically. The Uchiha had a smirk on his face at the thought of it. Hey, well, at any rate, let's go back to base, Itachi chuckled as the two began to set off once again. Kisame looked at Itachi for a moment and a familiar question popped into his mind. Itachi-sama, you never told me the name of that informant from Konoha. The Uchiha thought for a moment and responded, oh yeah, I guess I didn't. She is the best infiltrator I've ever seen. Kisame's interest soared as he asked, who is she? Itachi looked at him and stopped walking for a moment and spoke, she is the Hokage's secretary, Shizune I think her name was. Kisame sighed sadly, I'm afraid I don't know her. Yeah, she is one of Madara-sama's agents. I didn't even know myself until I left Konoha something close to 7 years ago. Although she was barely into her teens back then, she had keen skill for information gathering. Apparently it was good enough to impress Madara-sama. Itachi's statement sated Kisame's curiosity as the pair continued onward in silence. In the peaceful city of Konoha, a certain raven-haired Uchiha was sitting at a ramen stand. Sasuke stared at his food as he had nostalgic flashbacks about his friend. This was his favorite place to eat, it's just not the same without him here. I guess I always took his friendship for granted. Sasuke's inner reflections were cut off by a young woman who spoke to him. You're Naruto's teammate, right? I haven't seen him around at all. Do you know where he's been? The auburn-haired daughter of the ramen stand owner was standing in front of him staring at him. Sasuke's depressed attitude only seemed to worsen upon her mentioning of Naruto. He's not in Konoha anymore, Sasuke trailed off. The girl's cheery face began to dampen into an equally depressed one as Sasuke's. She looked at him for a moment and asked, "Please, tell me what happened to him. My father and I care dearly for him." Sasuke raised an eyebrow staring at her and she broke eye contact looking away with a blush on her face. I care for him dearly, but how could he ever care for me when all he would talk about was Sakura and yourself? Did he ever mention my name, Ayame, to you? Sasuke's interest in the conversation brought him from his half-dead state as he replied to her, not specifically, but he said your ramen stand was one of his favorite places in the world and that he loved the people there. Ayame sighed sadly and then asked, I need to know what happened to him. None of the other shinobi I asked will tell me a thing. The raven-haired boy let out a long deep sigh. Well, you heard about me trying to leave Konoha, I suppose. I guess I can start from there if you want the real story and not the official council bullshit. The girl's full attention was focused on Sasuke as she stared at him waiting for him to begin. I left Konoha. I won't go into the reasons why, but all you need to know was it was a personal matter. Naruto and several others from my age group were tasked to recover me. They encountered Orochimaru's sound nin along the way and that picked them off individually. Finally, when I reached the Valley of the End, Naruto had caught up with me. Ayame walked around the counter and sat next to Sasuke as he continued his story. We had a terrible battle, and we used our full arsenals on each other in an attempt to defeat one another. In the end, I used my cursed seal and he used his power. We had a final standoff when I charged a Chidori and he channeled a Rasengan. When we collided in the center, I saw his eyes change into a silvery purple and he impaled me in the chest with his Rasengan. Ayame gasped at Sasuke's story and she cut in. That's terrible, I heard rumors that he tried to kill you. Is that what they were talking about? Sasuke nodded before he began again. The council tried to use it as an excuse to demean his reputation further. I tried to kill him as well, but that's not the point. Anyways, when he carried me back, I was conscious for some of the time, and I heard him say things that would honestly shock most people. The ramen girl cringed as she thought about it. What did he say? Sasuke broke eye contact as he stared at the bowl in front of him. He said he hated Konoha and almost everybody in it. He went on a rant about how they didn't deserve his loyalty and how even his closest friends, meaning me, Tsunade-sama, Sakura, Kakashi, Jiraiya, and Iruka had veiled doubts about his potential. I don't believe that's true, but judging from his thought process at the time I believe he thought it was. The worst thing he said though was how he used to get beaten every birthday he had until the third Hokage made it stop. I used to think he was a happy fool, but now I see that it was a mask to his true feelings. Ayame gasped in horror at the thought of Naruto being beaten as a kid. Sasuke took a deep breath and continued, I thought I knew true pain. When my clan was killed, I suffered the indignity of loneliness fueled by an insatiable hatred, but he's been alone his entire life. I learned later from Iruka that his progress had been derailed and sabotaged constantly to make him fail in the academy. I didn't learn of his true worth until he saved my life in Wave Country on our first C-rank mission that ended up becoming an A rank. Ayame held her head down in sorrow as she commented, he's such a nice person, to think all of those terrible things happened to him, and there was barely anybody who tried to stop it. Sasuke looked at the girl who appeared to be holding back tears as he replied softly, I passed out sometime before he brought me to the village and didn't wake up again until I got news from Tsunade-sama that he was missing. They all claimed that he was kidnapped by my brother Itachi, but I think he left. Ayame gazed at the wall flabbergasted for a moment as she processed all of the information. Thanks for telling me, Sasuke-san. I think my father needs to hear this as well. Just leave the money on the counter. The girl got up and went into the kitchen behind the counter, leaving Sasuke. The Uchiha finished his bowl of ramen and got up to leave. He walked around the corner and put his hands in his pockets as he looked down at the ground. Thoughts began to race through his mind once again as he wandered down the streets of Konoha. Naruto is gone, I suppose nothing will change that. Anyways, I wonder how long I'll have to wait before they let me go do missions again. I am so bored of this civilian crap. Out of nowhere, a certain masked Junin ran up to Sasuke and started to walk next to him. What's up, Sasuke? You look rather down. The Uchiha shrugged as he disregarded his sensei's observation. Well, I just thought that since you have all this free time, and I've been assigned to watch you all day, maybe we could continue into some more training. Sasuke's perked up at the mention of training as Kakashi continued, anything beats wallowing in shame all day. Kakashi gave his one-eyed youth smile and motioned for Sasuke to follow him as he headed off. Sasuke followed his sensei to their old training ground. Unknown to Sasuke, a certain purple-haired kunoichi had been listening to his entire conversation with Ayame. Anko held her eyes closed as she leaned against the wall. So that's why he left. I thought as much. I wonder if I'll ever see him again, she thought to herself as she wandered half-drunk home. The image of his face kept popping into her mind despite her attempts to block them out. Gah, why should I care if he left? Why can't I stop thinking about this, about him? She asked herself before arriving at her home. She opened her door and plopped on the couch and felt her head throb painfully. The way the villagers looked at him, almost like the way they look at me. Distrust, fear, and hatred are the only things I see in them. If I ever see him again, I'm leaving with him. Her mind wandered as she subconsciously admitted to herself the crush she had recently developed for Naruto. The plot thickens, she drifted into unconsciousness as one word slipped from her mouth, Naruto-kun. At a discreet, unknown location, 9 Akatsuki members stood around in large dark cave facing an orange-masked individual. The figure began to speak. I declared myself the official leader of Akatsuki, over a year ago, for those of you who don't know. Any challenges to me for supremacy will result in your displacement of life. I called you all here for one sole purpose. That purpose is to tell you what our new objectives are. As most of you know, we've been tracking Biju and their containers lately. The only 2 Jinchuriki we know of are the 9-tailed and the 1-tailed beast's containers. I want all of you to pair off again and search for the others. Don't blow your cover. I want to identify the most protected and powerful ones so we can capture them early before the nations catch on to Akatsuki and our goals. A unanimous chorus sounded, yes, Tobi-sama. The swirl orange masked man began to speak again. There is also a certain individual that you will all have to watch out for. Everyone's attention focused intently on Madara as he continued, a rogue nin by the name of Pain. Several looks of skepticism swept through the group as a familiar man known as Hidan with a triple-bladed scythe spoke up, we're supposed to be scared of some rogue ninja. I doubt he could take on any of us by ourselves, let alone in pairs. Madara looked at Hidan and laughed at him. He already defeated Itachi and Kisame. This rogue nin is the Jinchuriki of the 9 tails. Everybody present except Zetsu, Madara, and said individuals held their mouths open in shock as they looked over to Itachi and Kisame for confirmation. Kisame let out a super exaggerated sigh as he stated, yeah, he's one bad motherfucker. Itachi nodded as he added, he has the rinnegan, he defeated us with one of the Rakudo Sennin's jutsus. Hidan gave a disbelieving look to Itachi as he smirked, I call bullshit on that one, you mean to tell me that somebody actually has the rinnegan? And he defeated both of you? Kisame groaned in irritation, we weren't trying to kill him, but it was impossible to subdue him, and later he had friends show up halfway into our fight, the only problem is they had been dead for 2 years. The normally quiet Conan decided to enter the conversation, How have they been dead for 2 years? Who were they? Kisame gave her an irritated glance before answering. They were Zabuza the demon of the mist and his apprentice Haku. They died 2 years ago during some stupid bridge fight with some kids in the copy Nin Kakashi. Conan raised an eyebrow at Kisame and she replied bluntly, "You know an awful lot about them, I see. They must have been friends of yours at one point, I bet." The shark Nin gave her a nasty death glare as he retorted angrily, "Keep your observations to yourself, you bitch. I was just saying that I found it odd how they were serving this guy, Pain, despite the fact that there were official reports of them dying." Deidara decided to join the argument and laughed, "Ladies, you're both pretty." They both turned to look at him coldly. Kakuzu plainly added, "You're sure one to talk, mister. Pretty boy art lover." The blonde-haired man shot Kakuzu a smirk as he began to sing, "What can I say, I'm beautiful in every single way." Blank stares focused on the blonde, causing him to laugh to himself. "Yeah, sorry I haven't blown anything up in a while. My artistic horizons have been hindered lately, so I've been a bit on edge." Everyone rolled their eyes and focused back on Madara. "I just thought that you guys should know that failure is never tolerated, but since Itachi and Kisame faced a rinnegan wielder who just so happened to be the Nine-Tails Jinchuriki, I am letting it slide. Do not engage Pain under any circumstances, do you understand me?" A unanimous chorus of agreement sounded once again. Conan had a troubled look on her face and asked, "What do you intend to do with this Pain? Because the way I see it, letting some powerful Jinchuriki run around and swing his into everyone's business unopposed seems foolhardy to me." Madara nodded his head in acknowledgement. "Yes, that is true, Conan, but eventually he will grow arrogant and seek us out, and I shall personally handle him." Itachi and Kisame traded quick smirks as Madara finished. "Okay, I'm assigning all of you specific jobs. Zetsu, you are going to watch Orochimaru full time, report all of his actions to me. Sasori and Deidara, I want you two to keep a close eye on the one-tailed beast's container, the cage, try to be discreet. Hidan and Kakuzu, you two go search Earth Country, Itachi and Kisame go search in Lightning Country. I will search in Water Country and several surrounding areas. Conan, you have two special tasks." The woman shot a confused look at her leader waiting for her assignment. "Conan, you are tasked with keeping an eye on Omegakure and Takigakure. Those two villages have been unsettling lately according to rumors. Kill their leaders and see if you can root out some information." The woman nodded. Madara finished. "You are all dismissed. We'll meet back in a few years whenever all 9 Jinchuriki have been identified, and every nation toured for final intel. When we meet again, we'll organize a plan." Everyone filed out in their paired groups and split to the 4 winds. Conan started to head off before she felt Madara's presence behind her. "That was your official assignment, the other one is something I can trust only you with, Conan." The blue-haired Kunoichi turned around with a confused look on her young, beautiful face and raised an eyebrow. "What is it, Madara-sama?" He looked at her for a moment before answering, "I need you to go undercover and find out more about Pain. You may have to track him down or watch areas he is likely to cover. Zetsu won't be able to watch him much because I need him to keep an eye on Orochimaru in case the snake makes a wrong move." Conan gave Madara a disapproving look and huffed, "Why do I have to do that?" Madara laughed as she scowled, "Because you were the one who was so concerned about him running free unchecked, plus I'm sure he wouldn't turn a pretty girl's help down." Conan glared at him for a moment before groaning in anger, Fine, I'll look into it, if I have time, but I don't really see a point in." She was interrupted by Madara, "Be perceptive, girl, imagine how strong our cause would be if he joined us." Conan gasped at his statement, You want me to bring him to you? You would have him join our ranks? Do you really think he would surrender to our cause, after Itachi and Kisame tried to capture him?" Madara sighed as he began to pace around her. "You lack the foresight to understand my plan, Conan. For now you will do as you're told and keep an eye on those small western countries. In due time your path will cross with his and you'll know what to do." Madara disappeared without another word, leaving a blue-haired woman slightly irritated. She growled in frustration as she walked away and began to mock Madara. Be perceptive girl, you'll know what to do when the time comes, for fuck's sake why does he have to make everything a puzzle or a riddle? I think I'll know what to do, shove a kunai up your is what I'll do, the azure-haired beauty raged as she disappeared into the distance. Rumors. 3 years had gone by for the citizens of Konoha. For many of the regular people it was short and uneventful, however rumors of shinobi violence and criminal activities were all the talk as of late. A group of individuals were gathered in the Hokage's office. They had been summoned by Tsunade and now stood behind the weary woman as she stared out the window. She turned to speak to them as the door closed, signaling the last person had arrived. Good, you are all here now. I imagine you have all heard the rumors going around lately. The blonde woman asked the group of Junin in front of her. Among this group included a large list. Kakashi, Yamato, Anko, Neji, and all of Rookie 9, -1 of course. Some nodded and several others shook their heads. Many of the older Junin have been sent to investigate these disturbances in several of the surrounding countries. Tsunade sighed. As of late, there are rumors that our borders are in chaos. The leader of a megachur, Hanzo, was murdered over 2 years ago, leaving a large vacuum of power for many of the small-time criminals there. Violence is prevalent, and that's not the only thing going on out there. Sakura cut into her explanation after Tsunade finished. Yes, they say that the assassin was a cloaked woman who murdered half of a megachur's leadership, and she assumed control of the village. Several present shot Sakura annoyed glances at the sound of hearing her speak. Many of them held her responsible for Naruto leaving. Despite what several of them would admit, the blonde had personally affected all of them at one point, and his disappearance left an uneasy tension when they were around Sakura. Anko chimed in casually, well damn, Pinky's got everything figured out. We should all just listen to her instead of the Hokage. The pink-haired girl shot a nasty glare at Anko and spoke back, I don't know what your problem is, you weird bitch, but I was just trying to help by giving my input. Anko's eyebrow twitched as she stared at Sakura. I don't know who you think you are, but nobody cares about anything you have to say. Tsunade held her tongue as she watched the conversation in interest. How dare you? I am Tsunade-sama's apprentice, I'll have you know. The inhabitants of the room eagerly watched the scene unfold, some hoping for a fight. I could care less if you were her wiper. You are probably the worst excuse of a ninja this place has ever seen. Fucking pink hair. That's not stealthy, not to mention a very small chakra pool, and to top it off, you're nothing but a howling banshee bitch that wouldn't even be here if it wasn't for the fact that your teammates carried you. Kakashi looked as if he was about to say something, but then he stopped, silently agreeing with everything Anko had said. Sakura looked as if she was getting really emotional. I'm not going to stand here and take this from some washed-up pupil of Orochimaru who clearly doesn't understand when her betters are speaking. Anko got up to Sakura's face and began to yell, well, aren't you a little narcissistic bitch? You're worthless and hated, just ask anybody here. Sakura looked around the room and noticed everybody staring at her with mixed glances of disapproval or hatred in Sasuke's case. Tell me guys what you think of me to shut her up. Sakura demanded as she stared at the group. The Junin simply stared at her. Kakashi-sensei, Neji, Shikamaru. The three of them gave her bored, uninterested glances as they disregarded her presence. I know my Sasuke-kun appreciates me. She boasted. The Uchiha leered at her full of malice. No, I don't, I never did. And thanks to you, my best friend has been missing for 3 fucking years. Desperately, the pink-haired girl looked to Ino, her best childhood, Ino. Anything to say? Her friend simply looked away from her. Sasuke told us about you trying to get Naruto in trouble, Sakura. Sakura looked petrified at Ino's rejection as she finally turned to Hinata. Hinata, not you as well. The Hyuga girl stared at Sakura for a moment and sighed. I agree with everything Sasuke said. Naruto-kun was a great person, and what you did to him was wrong. She whimpered as she started to crack under the pressure of everyone's silent staring. How am responsible for him disappearing? Sasuke could have melted her face off with the look radiating off of his. He left because you tried to get the council to strip his shinobi rank. Not to mention being a bitch to him all those years, no wonder he left. She looked back at him with a confused glance. What do you mean he left? Tsunade sighed once again as she entered the conversation. We have reports that he was emotionally unstable his entire time back in Konoha, and we have reports of him being spotted near the borders of Fire Country over 3 years ago, when he was going to the Fox Den. Sakura looked around shocked as the disregard from the group turned into venomous stares. You can't all hold me responsible for him leaving, can you? He was kidnapped from what I hear. Anko laughed at her as Sakura began to frown. Tsunade sighed deeply as she watched Sakura back away from the group in a fit of emotions. Sakura, go take a breather, I'll brief you individually later. Sakura held her head down in shame as she felt her eyes begin to water. She ran out of the Hokage's office in tears, leaving a very relieved-looking group of individuals. Tsunade turned to the group and slowly began, anyways, back to what I was saying. Hanzo was one of the most powerful shinobi of our lifetime, and it is troubling to hear of his death. Although a megacure isn't the only issue we have lately. There have been reports of a notorious S-rank criminal known as Pain, who has been terrorizing many surrounding countries. According to Anbu, he's been sighted in Wave Country, Water Country, Snow Country, Sound Country, and even through our own borders. Kakashi asked curiously, who is this Pain? I don't think I've ever heard of him. Tsunade frowned as she turned to the window. Nobody knows who he is, nobody even knows what he looks like, but they say he just showed up out of nowhere and started wreaking havoc somewhere close to 2 or 3 years ago. Several present traded concerned glances and Neji spoke up, is that why you called us here, Hokage-sama? The woman turned to meet the Hyuga's gaze and she replied, yes and no. I wanted to tell you guys about some of the things Anbu have dug up about him in case you encounter him on your mission. Everybody in the room tensed as Tsunade called out, Shizune, bring the reports in. The brunette woman strolled in past the group casually, unlike her normal racing, busy self. Right here, Tsunade-sama. The Hokage nodded and began to open the report, reviewing parts of it. It says here the earliest sightings of Pain came from Wave Country. I don't know if you remember Tazuna the bridge builder, but he was the one who reported Pain in the first place. Kakashi and Sasuke shot surprised looks at Tsunade, and Sasuke asked, what happened? Tsunade began to pace unlike her normal self as she placed the folder on the desk. Tazuna says that 2 black-cloaked men with red clouds on them kidnapped and imprisoned the villagers of Wave as hostages for some unknown purpose. He said that he remembered their names, Kisame and your brother, Itachi. Sasuke felt anger swell up at the mention of his older brother. He stared at Tsunade fiercely, waiting for her to finish. Kisame is an S-ranked criminal from Kurigakure, and we all know who Itachi is. Anyways, we have over 50 eyewitnesses that they were held captive until a shadowy figure arrived and battled the two. Tazuna says that after a terrible battle he assumed their rescuer had won the fight because he came back to the temple. This also brought up more disturbing news. Everybody intently watched Tsunade as she elaborated further. They say that 3 figures emerged from the mist after the battle outside of the temple where many of the villagers still were. Anbu interviewed many of the hostages, and some were thought delusional, claiming that the figures identified themselves as Pain and the Demon of the Mist. This is where our first sighting of Pain was. Kakashi coughed. You mean there were sightings of Zabuza of the Mist? Tsunade nodded. Yes, and his hunter nin companion as well. Sasuke visibly tensed at the memory of Zabuza and Haku. Tsunade-sama, what did Anbu find out about those sightings? Also, could the villagers have caught a look at Pain? She turned to him with a disturbed look on her face. Nobody is 100% certain, but their graves were completely empty according to the townspeople. As for your other question, nobody in that village will talk about Pain himself. None of the villagers would speak about the event after Danzo's root agents finished talking to them. Shocked gasps and wide eyes met Tsunade's comment. There was a long silence before Shikamaru finally broke it. How come you never told any of us about this until now? Tsunade sighed as she glanced at him. It was a battle between 5S ranked criminals. I'm pretty sure that's not on a need-to-know basis unless you're part of active duty Anbu, or myself. Shikamaru rolled his eyes much to Tsunade's annoyance. I guess that would be troublesome. Enko started to speak, so what was the point of that long, boring, story? Tsunade turned to the purple-haired snake mistress and shrugged. I just thought you guys should know in case you encounter trouble on your mission, which brings me to the original reason why I brought you all here. Tsunade frowned as she examined her Junin squad. If you recall what Sakura mentioned earlier, there was a woman who usurped a Megacor's leadership over 2 years ago. Our spies claim she is named Conan. Mixed looks of confusion swept through the party of Junin as they silently listened. Beyond that, there isn't much else we know about her, but many of the daimyo in surrounding countries are offering to pay fortunes to anybody who can kill her. The simple fact that she killed Hanzo means that she is a cage-level criminal. We 3 Sannin didn't even defeat Hanzo in our youth, so that might give you an idea what she is capable of. Everyone in the room bowed their heads knowing what she meant. Konoha's economy is suffering lately due to trading routes being attacked and many won't travel for fear of being killed. A Megacor has a large monopoly over the trading roads in all of the Western countries, and even dare to cut off our own lines to Suna. Obviously, this Conan is far too dangerous for us in the surrounding countries, so you are tasked to assassinate her by any means necessary. I would prefer minimum casualties, but this is a vital mission. I already sent my Anbu platoon ahead, meet up with them and coordinate an offensive. Several nods followed before the Hokage turned to her assistant. By the way, Shizune, I need you to go there as well in case the need for a skilled medic arises. Everybody nodded as Shizune shook her head nervously. Tsunade-sama, maybe you should tell them about the last group of people that tried to kill Conan. Surprised looks were directed to the woman. Tsunade acknowledged her comment. Yes, Shizune has a point. I was sent a full company of Junin to kill her over a year ago, and they were all wiped out. A large chorus of gasps erupted from the group before Choji asked, "You're sending us on a suicide mission?" The Hokage looked down in shame as she began, "Believe me, I don't have a choice. So long as this Conan is alive, the surrounding countries have no fear of attacking Fire Country. I can't believe I'm saying this, but Conan is far more terrifying than Hanzo." Shikamaru had a deep thought written on his face as he slowly began to speak. How did they wipe out a company of Junin? I heard AIM was a relatively small shinobi nation. The almond brown eyes of Tsunade scanned the group in front of her. Apparently Conan practically blew up half the village to kill them all. I contacted Iowa to see if they would be willing to help us attack a Megacor again, but they refused. Kiba began to laugh. Oh, that's cool, we might as well just stab ourselves now. Ino gave a concerned look as she questioned, why would they refuse? Don't they want payback? Yamato spoke up for the first time at the meeting and casually answered, well, I imagine losing a big chunk of your village's Junin in one battle would deter you from wanting to send more people to their deaths. You won't be alone. Also, don't forget that I have a platoon of my best Anbu there. For this mission, you will be in charge, Kakashi. You can assign your own lieutenants, just get the job done. You are all dismissed. The group bowed their heads in unison and filed out of the Hokage's office one by one. Finally, only 3 figures remained. Among this trio included Shizune, Sasuke, and Kakashi. The masked Junin spoke up in an unusual concerned tone. Tsunade, tell me more about what Anbu dug up in Wave Country. Zabuza and Haku were extremely dangerous criminals. We saw them die. Tsunade glanced at Kakashi and back to Sasuke, reading the troubled look on their faces. It is possible it could have been a genjutsu, but it seems highly unlikely. Since their graves were uncovered, Sasuke had a disturbed look on his face. That's insane. They both died on that bridge and were buried. That can't be true. Kakashi and Sasuke traded concerned stares as Tsunade handed the file to Kakashi. Read through it if you want, go talk to Danzo and Root, or see for yourself. All three will tell you the exact same thing, that pain has found a way to reanimate them. Shizune tensed at the mention of pain, which did not go unnoticed by the Hokage. Something wrong, Shizune? The brunette woman casually smiled and rubbed the back of her head. No, of course not, Hokage-sama. Her mind had a different answer, however. Stupid bitch, Conan already knows you're coming, and if you see Pain and his followers kiss your goodbye. Kakashi gave Shizune a weird stare. Tsunade looked at Sasuke for a moment and held up the book he had given her 3 years ago. Rakudo Sennin, I found out that this book is the original version. It is an account written by the sage's grandson. It's hundreds of years old. Commentaries have been added to it over the years, but I found its contents disturbing. Sasuke shot Tsunade a surprised look as she continued, there is something I thought I should tell you, Sasuke. Apparently the Sage of Six Paths had the power over life and death, and this book vaguely explains how the sage could resurrect people. Kakashi's one visible eye shot open in shock. You mean to tell us, you think this Pain is the Sage of Six Paths? That's impossible. She looked at the book once again before turning to Kakashi and Sasuke. It's just a wild theory, but nobody has seen Pain and lived to tell the tale except for one Kurigakure Anbu Nin. They refused to tell us anything about it. I don't know much about the sage, but apparently he did have a powerful bloodline known as the rinnegan. It could be possible that Pain has it, but it might just be superstition. Either way, unless we take out Pain sometime soon, Conan will be the least of our troubles. Kakashi and Sasuke nodded as they distantly stared at the wall. Tsunade placed the book down on her desk and paced around her desk. At any rate, be careful out there, guys. They bowed their heads in unison as they left. Shizune noticed the book sitting on Tsunade's desk and stealthily grabbed it as she walked out, leaving Tsunade alone in her office. She stared out the window and sighed. A white-haired man coughed and brought her attention out of her mind. Ah, Tsunade Haim, would you like me to go with them? The blonde-haired woman raised a brow at Jiraiya, who was standing at the window with a serious look on his face. We need you here, Jiraiya. The village isn't safe with all of our shinobi forces patrolling the borders and attacking AIM. The Toad Sage sighed as he continued. Conan was a former student of mine, an orphan from AIM. She was very adept at folding chakra into just about anything, which she would do with paper. She is extremely dangerous. You're sending those people to their deaths. Tsunade shot a surprised look at Jiraiya as she folded her arms. Former student. I didn't know you had any besides Minato. He frowned sadly as he stared at Tsunade. She was a very kind young girl once upon a time. She was 8 years old at the time I met her. I remember finding her stealing food in a small run-down village just out of a megacure. It was after the last war. She got caught by the stall owner and was about to get beaten before I intervened. After that, she kind of followed me around for about a day, constantly asking me if I would teach her how to be strong. Eventually, I decided to do so, just to teach her enough to fend for herself. However, she might as well have been my daughter because she stayed with me for 7 years back during my traveling days. After what happened with her, I came back to Konoha during the time of the Chunin exams where Orochimaru invaded. Tsunade looked at a slightly emotional Jiraiya as she asked, what happened? What did she do? He looked down in shame. I remember her talking to me one day about how the world was too cruel and life was unfair. She was a very angry individual who couldn't stand the sight of seeing other people happy. She asked me what I thought about killing. I regret what I told her. The Hokage tensed in anticipation before Jiraiya finished. I told her that some people deserve to die. It is not something that I'm proud of, but it was the truth. Tsunade cut in. That's unfortunate, but it's something not uncommonly seen in orphans. Jiraiya sighed deeply. Apparently she took it to heart, because one day, she and I were on a training trip in Earth Country and we stopped at this village. We got a couple of rooms at an inn and stayed for a few days. I went to the hot springs one afternoon to get inspiration for my book. Tsunade rolled her eyes at him as he continued, and she decided to go eat at one of the nice restaurants in town. Several hours later, I heard screaming and shouting coming from outside. I gathered myself and went to the center of the commotion, and I saw Conan standing over dozens of bodies covered in blood. Tsunade looked horrified as the story unraveled. Apparently, a rich woman had flaunted herself over Conan, making fun of her for being a lone kunoichi in the restaurant. I don't know the whole story, but I learned from several of the survivors that the woman called Conan a lonely wretch who would never find true love. Judging by the devastation and the death, I assumed something in the girl snapped that day. By the time I arrived, I was too late to save the 30 or so people she killed. I asked her why she did it, and she told me something that gives me nightmares to this day: they deserved to die. Jiraiya was silent for a moment as he felt self-pity wash over him. I didn't try to stop her as she ran away from the town. I wandered around for a year after she left, and had nightmares about it ever since. To think I created the monster she is today. She was 15 years old, and she killed 34 innocent people. I was there, and I should have stopped her, but something in me couldn't do it. All of those people, their blood is on my hands and not hers. Jiraiya, it wasn't your fault, you could never have. He snapped back at her, interrupting her sentence. It was my fault, Tsunade. I'm responsible for every single person she has killed, which is a number I only dread to hear. I should have made her understand. I should have helped her. I failed her, just like I failed Minato and just like I failed Naruto. Tsunade shot him a devastated look at the sight of seeing the man upset. Jiraiya, it's okay, you weren't responsible for what happened to Naruto, or Minato. The Toad Sage sighed as he looked away. I have to go, Tsunade. The woman gave Jiraiya a sad look as he jumped onto the open window. Jiraiya, he turned to look at her, but she couldn't find the words to speak as his sorrow deepened. I'll be at my house, Tsunade, I need to be alone for a while. He leapt out of the window, leaving Tsunade alone once again. She groaned in frustration as she yelled at nobody in particular, damn it. XXXXX. A brunette medic nin was walking through the streets of Konoha, making her way to the training grounds as she casually passed groups of people who didn't even notice her. Shizune was very good at blending into a crowd. Despite her plain appearance, she was simply considered by all to be a nice and pretty woman, but nobody ever could suspect her of the dark sins she had committed. Being the Hokage's apprentice made her one of Madara's most effective spies because she could directly report all of the village's actions and tactics. As she wandered into the forest, she walked by several trees as if expecting somebody to show up. As if on K, a figure emerged from the tree behind her and walked next to her. She turned to greet the individual with a twisted smile. They are on their way. It is a platoon of the Hokage's Anbu, around 30 or so strong, and a strike team of Junin including the copy nin Kakashi. I have also been sent as their medic. The plant ma on the figure's head opened up before he spoke. I shall report this to Conan immediately. Do they suspect? Shizune smiled darkly as she replied, no, the fools are rushing headlong into the trap as planned. Zetsu casually nodded before Shizune interjected, however, they have been curious about pain and are snooping around. They have sightings of pain all over wave, snow, water, and sound countries. The man nodded. Yes, he has been tracking Orochimaru lately, which is why I have been able to keep a close eye on both of them. I sent Kabuto to lure him to aim where he'll kill all of Konoha's nin for us. Zetsu's dark half began to speak. Orochimaru fled to Kusagakur, but all of his servants are still in Oto. He will kill all of our enemies there and all of the Konoha nin in a glorious display. So it would be a very good idea for you to get out of there before it happens. Shizune shot the human plant a confused look. Kabuto works for us. Zetsu simply nodded. He's one of Toba's agents sent to watch Orochimaru after he defected from Akatsuki. The medic nin nodded in understanding as she handed a scroll to Zetsu. Here is a list of Konoha's patrol schedule and battle plans. I also have a book that I think Toby might want to see. Shizune pulled a book out of her coat, handing it to the robed aloe vera man. Zetsu read the title out loud, Rakudo Sennin, I shall deliver this to Toby. Zetsu disappeared without another word as Shizune turned to head back into the city. She began to laugh out loud as she happily headed home to gather supplies for the mission to Omegakure. It's always the nice ones that turn out to be crazy. XXXXX. Back with Tsunade and Sakura, a conversation was raging. Tsunade-sama, I can't work with them, they all think I'm responsible for Naruto leaving. Tsunade glared at her for being ignorant. Despite whatever they may think or feel about you, you are still a shinobi, and you still have to work with them on this mission. I had thought that maybe after these 3 years of Naruto being gone you would begin to appreciate the attention and feelings he had for you, but it seems I was wrong. Sakura held her head down in shame. I know what I did was wrong, but at the time, I didn't think anything of it. It can't have all been my fault. The blonde woman shrugged. You were one of the catalysts to his disappearance, and judging by the things Sasuke says about you, I'm sure the others might feel the same. Still though, if you ever want to earn their forgiveness, then start acting like a proper kunoichi and not some spoiled whining brat. Sakura dejectedly bobbed her head. Yes, Hokage-sama, I'm sorry for what I did to Naruto. The Hokage gave her a stern look as she skeptically replied, maybe one day I'll be able to believe that, but that day won't come until Naruto comes home and you apologize to him. Sakura nodded and silence filled the office once again. Go join the others, Sakura, you are going to be one of the medics. Please think about what I've said. The pink-haired Junin bowed as she left, walking past a bandaged man who walked in with a condescending smirk. So I hear that you have finally come to terms about the Fox kid leaving. We may not see eye to eye in matters pertaining to him, but I was correct in my assumption that he was mentally unstable. Tsunade shot Danzo a death glare as she stood up. What is it you want, Danzo? The man gave her a passive-aggressive smile as he spoke. Nothing at all, I just thought I'd check up on the status of your Junin. Tsunade sighed as she looked around bored. They are en route to wipe out the leader of Omegakure. I sent many of my personal Anbu ahead of them as well. All we can do now is hope, and pray. Danzo silently nodded as he turned to leave. Rest assured that my root agents are working night and day to find Naruto, though I hope you can face the truth when they find him. The almond brown eyes of the Hokage shot an angry leer at the man as he walked out of the room smiling. How the hell did Sensei put up with that motherfucker? She trailed off as she pulled out a bottle of sake and began to drink. XXXXX. Naruto had grown immensely powerful over the past 3 years. True to his own agenda, he had been hunting Orochimaru. He originally started his quest out of revenge against Orochimaru for killing the third Hokage. However, his reason changed over the years. Now he wanted to kill Orochimaru to remove any competition against his own plans for world domination. After Haku, Zabuza, and he had left Wave Country, they had been wreaking havoc all over the continent. All branded as notorious S-class criminals, they encountered many would-be heroes who were murdered and in some cases mutilated as they tried to apprehend or kill him. Pain was the #1 criminal in the bingo books across all of the shinobi nations, and nobody even knew what he looked like or anything about him, seeing as he killed anyone who identified him. The rumors of his companions were even more shocking to the world, especially to Kurigakure in general. During a brief battle with their Anbu strike team, one survivor made it back to Mist to spread the word of Zabuza and Haku's notorious return. News of the battle at Wave near the demolished Temple of Whirling Tides had left many nations terrified as well by the desecrated landscape. Members of different nations would flock to the scene to uncover more about Pain. They were all given call sign titles by the shinobi nations. Zabuza was known by his former one as the Demon of the Mist, Haku was known as the Sanguine Hunter, and Naruto himself had been known by dozens of different names in different parts of the world. One of the most common was Pain the Invincible. Many of the titles were bestowed upon him by the superstitious people who had never seen but only heard of Trio and the trail of death that followed them. Naruto had changed over the past few years in appearance as well. He was much taller now, matching Zabuza in height and build. The Jinchuriki wore something similar to a black Anbu outfit and had a medium-sized Anbu blade on his back. Zabuza hadn't physically changed much at all, but wore an outfit somewhat similar to Naruto's except his was white and black. Haku on the other hand had blossomed into a fully developed and beautiful woman. Her hair was slightly longer, but not all that much different. The real difference was the curves that had developed. The woman was adorned in a green outfit similar to her previous one, with the exception of some cleavage left out. She was as beautiful as she was deadly. Overall, the three were a force to be reckoned with. They were currently hot on the tracks of Orochimaru's follower Kabuto in an attempt to uncover where the Snake Sanin's secret base of operations was. Kabuto had retreated to Otogakure and the trio were on the road leading to the village. Haku sighed as they walked, "If we want to catch this weasel, why are we walking there?" Naruto gave her a casual glance as he replied, "Obviously he intends to set up some poorly assembled trap believing us to be fools, and then he'll make his way to some kind of getaway trail which will lead us to Orochimaru. So by giving him a false sense of security we're making it easier on ourselves." Naruto shook his head in annoyance as they continued walking. "God damn, this Orochimaru is one slippery son of a bitch. I thought we had him last year when we were in Snow Country, but no, it was just another false trail." Zabuza sighed as he swung his sword around his arm out of reflexive habit. "Yeah, that place sucked, but at least you got something out of it, Naruto," Zabuza chuckled. Haku cut in darkly, "Yeah, if I ever see that woman again." Zabuza laughed as he processed that infamous evening through his head. What was her name again, Naruto? Naruto laughed. "Oh, you mean Koyuki Hime. Yeah, that was a bit of a random encounter, I guess you could call it." Haku's Hunter Nin mask was off and she had a displeased look on her face. "Encounter? That bitch is a rapist." Zabuza gave Haku a smirk. "Come on Haku, you know it was funny. I mean Naruto is a pimp after all." "I'm sorry but I had to do it, lol." Haku glared at him as she responded, "That chick was just a slut. I can't even believe you slept with her, Naruto-kun." Zabuza gave her a glazed smirk. "Ah, my little Haku is jealous. If she's a good girl, Naruto might just reward her eventually." She looked at Zabuza and sighed, "You're not helping me at all by encouraging this, Zabuza." Naruto finally looked at Haku and said, "I didn't realize this was such a big deal to you. Maybe if you were more upfront about it." The girl blushed madly and looked away, trying to hide her embarrassment. "I wasn't asking for." She was interrupted by an amused Naruto. "Oh. So you don't want it then?" She blushed even deeper before putting her Hunter Nin mask back on. Finally Naruto stopped teasing her. "Well, at any rate, I think Otogakure is just a few miles down the road." The group continued to walk silently for a moment before Zabuza spoke up. "Naruto, I have a request, if you would honor me, accept it." The Jinchuriki looked at the black-haired swordsman. "Sure Zabuza, I owe you and Haku favors for following me these past few years after Orochimaru." He bowed his head respectfully as he began, "It's just, I can't stop thinking about Karigakure and all of the loose ends I left there. I tried to kill the Mizukage before I left, Yagura." Naruto stopped in his tracks and stared at Zabuza intently. "Speak your mind, Zabuza, we have a few minutes." He sighed as he continued slowly, "Yagura is the reason I left, because I tried to kill him when he ordered a purge of all with Kekai Genkai throughout Mist. Bloodlines aren't revered in Kiri like they are in your Konoha, they are feared. Yagura was the three-tailed turtle's Jinchuriki, so obviously I couldn't defeat him. I found Haku when I fled, though she was an orphan." Naruto looked at Zabuza as the man finished. "So you want to go kill this Yagura?" The demon of the mist nodded. Haku spoke up. "Yes, Yagura is a terrible person, who deserves nothing short of a horrible death." The orange-haired man nodded his head in understanding. "He's a Jinchuriki with full control over his Biju, but if anyone can defeat him I think you could, Naruto." The Jinchuriki sighed as he looked at the two of them. "I never told you guys about my past." They both looked at him intently since he rarely shared personal history. "I was an orphan my entire life. I told you too that, but I never told you why." The duo looked at him confused as he began again. "The fourth Hokage sealed the nine-tailed fox inside of me. I'm a Jinchuriki as well." Complete shock was written over Zabuza's face and Haku's, which was recently uncovered again. Zabuza asked, shocked, so that red chakra? That was the Kyuubi's. I had always thought it was part of the rinnegan bloodline. Naruto shook his head sadly. The life of a Jinchuriki is a terrible one, full of loneliness, fear, and hatred. I'm sure this Yagura had his reasons for being the way he was. Haku looked at her leader and asked, what's it like, Naruto-kun? I mean, does the demon ever affect you? Kyuubi began to laugh in Naruto's mind. Go ahead and tell them that you hear voices in your head. I'm looking forward to hearing what they say. Naruto ignored Kyuubi as he spoke. Not really. I have full control over the demon, and with my rinnegan I can use all of its chakra. Kyuubi sighed as heard the sentence. That may be, but you can't deny that it is only by my doing that you even got this far. Zabuza and Haku nodded in understanding. Zabuza spoke up. I don't hold anything against you for that, Naruto, and neither does Haku. In fact, it only strengthens our resolve in your leadership. If you wish this Yagura dead, I shall kill him in your honor, Zabuza. The masked swordsman nodded in cheer as Haku cut in. Plus, it would be a good way to strike some fear into the pompous 5 great shinobi nations if they heard that Pain killed one of the cages. A chorus of laughter echoed amongst the three. Well, at any rate, let's go meet the lovely citizens of Oto. Unanimous cheering followed Naruto's comment as the three began to run to the village. After about 10 minutes, they reached the front gate of Otogakure and casually walked up to the guards as if they owned the place. The two Chunin standing guard shot concerned glances at one another when they saw the trio approach. Halt, what is your business in Oto? We were not told of any visitors. The second Chunin took one look at Zabuza and nearly pissed his pants. Yashoda, that's Zabuza of the Mist, and the Sanguine Hunter. So that must make him. The man looked at Naruto and was petrified as he saw the silvery purple eyes glaring at him. The other guard finished for him. Pain, oh by the gods no, why me? We're fucked, oh shit, oh shit, oh shit. Zabuza shot the two an annoyed glance as he jumped at them at superhuman speed and cleaved one in half with his sword. The other guard ran away in terror into the village but was frozen in place by ice and he felt a hand grab his throat. Naruto held the man off the ground and squeezed his throat in a terrible vice grip. Where is Kabuto? Answer me now or Zabuza will skin you alive. The man was choking in a desperate attempt to answer before Naruto released him, letting his body crash to the ground. He began to cough up blood. I don't know, he came here earlier today and told us to await further orders from Guren-sama. Zabuza grabbed the man by his hair and pulled his head back as he brought the man to his knees in front of Naruto. Naruto looked at him carelessly as he casually spoke, accept the greatest honor of dying by my hand. The man started to cry as Naruto pulled out a kunai and slashed the man's cheek slowly before stabbing him through the heart and letting him fall to the ground in a pool of blood. He looked at Haku and Zabuza. Let's go meet this Guren and find out where Kabuto is. They both nodded enthusiastically as they began to walk through the streets of Otogakure. As they made their way through the town, many of the civilians started to panic and cower as the group passed. Finally, they reached what appeared to be the largest building in the village and were surrounded. Anbu and Junin jumped down surrounding them as they continued to walk unfazed by the arrival. Finally, a woman jumped in front of Naruto as well as two figures to her sides. The two figures were ones he recognized as Tayuya and Kimimaro. He gave them peculiar glances wondering why they were still alive. The main woman had a beaming smile on her face as she inspected them. Well, 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 what brings the invincible Pain and his followers to our humble village? Naruto gave the woman a death stare as he spoke. I am here for Kabuto, hand him over and maybe I won't slaughter everyone here. She gave him a surprised look as he began to laugh at her. She glared at him in anger. What makes you think you stand a chance against my entire village? Zabuza butted into the conversation with an amused tone. I thought this was Orochimaru's village. Or are you his wife? Daughter perhaps? She retorted in an irritated tone. I am not. I am Orochimaru's second, and I was raised by him. I am Guren. Kimimaro spoke up in a calm voice. Orochimaru has offered protection and care for many of the people in this village, and your ill will against him and is falsely accused. Naruto began to speak again. I thought Gaara had killed you over 3 years ago. Seems strange that you haven't died from your illness either. The Jinchuriki then shot a look at the fiery red head next to him and laughed. It seems you're still alive too, Ms. Hothead. Tayuya started to cuss. How the fuck do you know about that, you fucking shithead? Naruto smirked as he winked at her, which only irritated her more. Who the hell do you think you are, just walking into our village like you own the place? She yelled as Kimimaro shot a super confused look at Naruto. He questioned, yes, how did you know about that? Naruto sighed as he elaborated, seems Orochimaru failed to retrieve Sasuke, and now he is wallowing in some hole unable to perform a single jutsu, and when I find him I will tear off his head and keep it as a trophy. Everyone present froze at the amount of killer intent that was radiating from Naruto. Gurren roared as she went through several hand seals. Over my dead body you will. Shoten. Sushotu. Crystal release. Jade crystal blade. A long crystal blade formed over Gurren's arm as she rushed Naruto with impressive speed. She tried to stab him, but he grabbed her wrist with unseen speed and began to squeeze. Everyone present tensed up as if they were about to fight. Naruto calmly stated, this is between me and your leader. Everybody backed up reluctantly from Naruto's killer intent. Gurren felt the pressure of his grip around her wrist begin to hurt painfully. She tried to kick him, but he easily grabbed her leg and threw her to the ground. She jumped back up as she held her wrist in pain. Naruto spoke up casually, can you feel it, Gurren? The fear, closing in all around you. You stand no chance against me. She began to yell at him, I fear nothing. She went through several hand seals and shot a barrage of crystals at him. Die, fool. Naruto laughed as the crystals flew closer. Shinra Tensei. The invisible shield repelled the attack back at Gurren and she blocked the rebound with a crystal wall. What the hell was that? She asked, desperately confused as Naruto began to walk slowly towards her. She flew through more hand seals and a crystal dragon formed and began to pounce at Naruto. He sighed as he drew his sword and charged it in his hands. Futon. Ryujin Rasengan. Wind release. Dragon sword spiraling sphere, the sword charged with a glowing blue spike of spiraling chakra that began to swirl around Naruto in the form of a dragon. It completely shattered Gurren's crystal dragon to pieces, raining down the fragments below. Gurren roared in frustration as she formed 2 more crystal blades on her arms and began to duel Naruto in a sword fight. The orange-haired criminal easily parried her attacks with his Anbu sword. She began to flurry her attacks relentlessly in an attempt to hit him, filling with kicks and flips or anything to throw him off balance. Unfortunately for her, he remained completely composed and continued toying with her. Why the fuck can't I hit you? She screamed in anger as she began to attack faster. Finally, Naruto grabbed one of her wrists again, and stabbed her with his sword as he caught the other wrist that attempted to slap him. He squeezed them in his infamous vice grip and she fell to her knees in agony. He released his grip and began to pace in front of her, looking around at the crowd. As she knelt in front of him helplessly, he slashed her throat with one simple motion and she fell over dead. Everyone present began to back away slowly as Naruto started laughing. If she was the best you have here, then the rest of you are doomed. Zabuza and Haku laughed at the amount of fear sweeping through the crowd. Naruto took a closer look at the body and thought to himself for a moment. She may be useful. A joyful chorus of Kyuubi's laughter echoed in his head. Best way to make an example of these fools is to make their leaders bow before you. He thought about it for a moment, and then channeled power from his arms at her dead body and felt the familiar swirling vision. Gurren's body was elevated off the ground and began to glow white. Zabuza and Haku watched, interested as they had always been curious of their own resurrection. Many of the sound Junin and Anbu whimpered in horror or simply fainted at the sight of a completely rejuvenated Gurren's eyes opening. She stood up in complete confusion as she stared at Naruto. He stared at her for a moment and she began to do the same. She looked at his eyes in complete shock. Naruto smiled as he began to speak. Now you understand, I have the rinnegan. She looked at him in disbelief as she tried to back away but had her wrists in his grip once again. The two surviving members of the Sound Five had destroyed looks on their faces. You killed me. How am I alive? She gasped in shock as she looked over to Kimimaro and to Yuya, who continued to stare in disbelief. Naruto laughed as he shouted, because I am a god. The rinnegan is all-powerful. She shot him an angry glare as she shouted back, I don't believe in that superstitious shit. You're no god. Naruto kneed her in the stomach and she fell to her knees again. If I am not a god, then why are you on your knees before me? A super large crowd of not only Oto shinobi, but citizens as well gathered around the scene and stared in utter disbelief. Gurren finally felt a sense of hopeless defeat wash over her as she looked up at Naruto with a pained face and met his stare. She silently asked, how did you bring me back to life? A long silence filled the air as he looked at her. Before he answered, you wasted your unique powers serving a man who could offer you nothing but lies and death. Make yourself useful to me and I shall offer you far more than he ever could. I am your master now. Gurren looked unconvinced. You presume too much pain. Orochimaru is my. She stopped speaking as he cupped her cheek with his hand. She felt a surge of warmth flow through her body at his touch. This feels so good. His hand is so warm, she thought as she began to smile. She experienced his chakra flowing from his hand and felt it washing over her. She smiled as he stroked her face, much to Haku's displeasure. Zabuza whispered to Haku with a quick smirk, I told you he was a pimp. The masked hunter Nin only glared in jealousy as Gurren stared at Naruto with infatuation. This is merely a taste of what I can offer you, Naruto stated soothingly. Many of the viewers present at this fight were perplexed by the fact that Gurren was allowing pain to touch her face. Yuya and Kimimaro traded shocked glances as they saw Gurren's face become flustered. Yuya whispered to Kimimaro, what the fuck is happening? Kimimaro looked at the red head and sighed, whatever it is, Gurren-sama seems to be enjoying it. Yuya shot a disgusted glare at Gurren as she sighed, secretly jealous that the dead sexy enemy was seducing her commander. A blue glow of chakra surrounded Naruto and then it enveloped Gurren as well. She spoke up, yes, you can offer me power. Everyone gasped at her comment. Finally Naruto stopped and offered Gurren a hand up. She took it and he pulled her to her feet. She had a blushing face as she yelled for all to hear, I am yours to command, my Lord Pain. Everyone bow. All of the shinobi and civilians present obeyed the order without question. Kimimaro and Yuya, however, had not bowed yet. The white-haired man spoke up as he coughed, Gurren, are you insane? He's the enemy. Orochimaru-sama would have your head for this. Yuya chimed in, bitch, just because you got a crush on this asshole doesn't mean that he's in charge of this place. Naruto turned to Yuya and began to laugh, ah yes, Yuya was it. You certainly did have quite the mouth on you back then, I see nothing has changed. She shot a nasty glare at Naruto as she started to run at him with her fist raised. Naruto easily grabbed her fist as she tried to punch him in the face. She felt a strange overpowering presence around him as he held her fist. She stared into his eyes and found herself trapped in their seducing gaze. Who are you, Pain? She asked as her anger completely dissipated from the look he was giving her. Kimimaro himself began to wonder the same thing as he felt himself being captivated by the mysterious man known as Pain. Naruto laughed as pulled his mask down to his neck, revealing his face. Everyone was enamored by the sight of his face. Yuya saw the whisker marks and saw the flashbacks of a blonde-haired boy in an orange jumpsuit. Naruto covered her mouth as she was about to shout his name. She resisted violently at first but saw no way to overpower Naruto. Naruto looked at Kimimaro and Gurren, you three come with me, we shall discuss this in private. Gurren turned to the large crowd and shouted, show's over everybody. Return to your stations and jobs. The large crowd began to disperse as the three sound nin followed Naruto inside the large building, followed by Haku and Zabuza. Many of the Anbu, Junin, or even desk secretaries bowed low as Naruto walked by. One man even went as far as to shout, "All hail Pain." The six shinobi finally entered a large room that Naruto assumed was Orochimaru's main office. He walked in and sat at the main chair, exemplifying the fact that he owned everyone and everything in the room. Zabuza stood next to him while Haku pulled up a chair and sat directly to his other side. The three sound nin sat in the chairs adjacent to the main one. A long silence filled the room before Tayuya began. "I remember you, Pain, or should I say Naruto Uzumaki." Kimamaro's eyes shot open as he looked at Tayuya for confirmation. "You mean to tell me that he's that blonde kid who defeated Sasuke in the Valley of the End?" She smiled as she nodded. The redhead gave him another glance and began to speak. "We were able to deal with your friends, they decided to flee. Me and Kimamaro were the only survivors, unfortunately. Still though, we did witness your battle with Sasuke." Kimamaro nodded his head as he spoke. "Yes, it was quite impressive. Unlike the trash that followed you on that mission, you were the one who did everything. We didn't dare to attack you after that display." Naruto held his hand up. "Don't flatter me, that was a terrible day for me. It was the day I realized how much I hated the world." Everyone in the room watched Naruto as he had a distant, sad look on his face. Tayuya stared at him before asking, "Why did you leave, if you don't mind me asking?" Naruto continued to remain silent as the group traded confused shrugs at his depressed face. Gurren looked at him and calmly added, "Don't answer her, Pain, I mean Naruto. It's probably something he's not proud of." Tayuya. The redhead shot the woman a glare as she disregarded her comment. "I want to know, damn it. You seemed so intent on bringing back Sasuke, lol, I had to do it, sorry Sasuke, and then you leave the village right afterwards, there must be some reason why." Naruto sighed as he looked at the redhead. "My reasons for leaving don't matter, my goals now are the only things that matter. You three shall pledge yourselves to my cause and help me kill Kabuto and Orochimaru." Zabuza leaned against the wall with a smile on through his masked face. "God, I love that kid, just walks in and takes over a whole village with no effort, and then simply demands their leaders serve him." Haku spoke up skeptically. "How can you trust them, Naruto-kun? They are Orochimaru's most powerful and loyal subordinates." The Jinchuriki stood up from his chair and walked over to Gurren. She immediately stood up and knelt at his feet as she began to speak. "I would be honored to serve you, Naruto, in any way you would ever want." Haku rolled her eyes at Gurren's veiled invitation. Kimamaro stood up and said, "I can't betray Orochimaru, he was my savior and was there for me during all the dark times of my life." Tayuya glanced at him annoyed. "Stop being such a Kimamaro. Orochimaru sacrificed people for his own ends, he can't promise you anything anymore, but Naruto-kun can." Gurren looked at Tayuya and started to chuckle. "Naruto-kun is it? I never thought I'd see the day Tayuya uses honorifics." Haku cut into the conversation with an annoyed huff. "So are you two joining or not? If you don't, Naruto-kun will slay you and we'll be on our way." Zabuza began to laugh as he added, "Yeah, we really need to catch Four Eyes and cut off his legs." Naruto looked over to the two survivors of the Sound Five and they both knelt down to him. Kimamaro began, "I can't deny your power, Naruto-sama, your generosity is undeniable and you are worthy for me to serve." The Genjutsu master bowed her head and spoke, "I'll follow you as well. From the things I've heard and seen about you, you are one stone-cold badass, I'm your girl Naruto-kun." Tayuya blushed as she made eye contact with Naruto, and quickly looked away. Gurren looked over with a slight glare at that as she raged in her head, "His girl you better watch yourself, Red. I'm the alpha female here." Haku's mind was running along a similar thought process. "Shit, now I have competition for him. I will murder these bitches if any of them touch him." Zabuza looked around the room at all of the kunoichi and laughed to himself. "Oh shit, I'm going to write a bestseller to rival Aika Aika Paradise if this kind of tension keeps flying around." Naruto looked around at the 5 shinobi and nodded. Very well, Otogakur belongs to me now. This will be one of our bases of operation. Gurren walked over to Naruto. I know where Kabuto is. The orange-haired shinobi looked at her for a moment waiting for an answer. He was here several hours before you came, told me he was heading for a Megakure to meet up with Orochimaru. Naruto smiled as he pulled his mask back on. You three are coming with us, Orochimaru shall see his last day soon. Kimimaro spoke up in a worried voice. I'm not sure if you've heard this or not, but AIM recently had all of its leaders wiped out. They say that Hanzo was single-handedly defeated by a woman named Konan. Mixed looks of interest or confusion were prevalent. Haku spoke up. Hanzo the salamander. Somebody killed him one-on-one. Tayuya answered her. Kabuto was talking to us about it this morning. He said that she battled him a few miles from the village, turned everything within 5 square miles into a charred crater. She took his breathing mask as a trophy. It was the only thing left from what I hear. Gurren nodded as she cut into finish. The people of AIM call her the Angel of Death. I've only seen her one time in my travels with Orochimaru. She wasn't what you'd be expecting. She is barely into her 20s. Everyone shot her looks of disbelief before Naruto said, if she gets in my way she'll die as well. They all nodded at their leader's unwavering resolve as he began to speak again. By the way, don't call me by my actual name in public. I want to keep my identity a secret from Konoha. The 5 shinobi followed their leader out of the office as he began to leave. Upon exiting the building he found a large gathering of shinobi surrounding it. A random Junin spoke up. This man has Gurren-sama under some kind mind-controlling jutsu. I cannot allow you to leave. Gurren looked at the man and started to laugh. I don't know if you caught the memo, but Pain is in charge of Odo now. The man looked shocked as Naruto walked up to him. Is he, the Pain? Naruto sighed as he stared at the man and he began to enunciate for all around to hear. I am assuming control of this village. Your leaders have already pledged their loyalty to me. Join my cause and be a part of the revolution, or join Orochimaru on dead on a pike when I find him. Everyone present bowed low and the Junin even took it a step further by pledging, your reputation is an accurate one, Lord Pain. We the people of Odo shall stand with your cause, even against our former leader Orochimaru. Naruto smiled as he began to take his leave of Otogakur. The citizens continued to bow as Naruto left through the south gate with his followers. XXXXX. A white-haired man had been watching the scene through a spyglass the entire time and grimaced in horror as the people of Odo once again bowed to Pain. Oh shit, Orochimaru is going to be pissed about this. He began to run away from the village at high speed as he dared not look back in fear of Pain capturing him. As he passed under a tree he was stopped by the sound of a familiar voice. You seem worried, Kabuto. Has the plan been compromised? The white-haired man turned to see a familiar plant-like man standing behind him. Zetsu, what is it you want? The plant maw on his head opened as Zetsu replied plainly, I need to know if everything is going according to plan. Toby won't like it if you fail him again. Kabuto looked over his shoulder worried. There has been a strange occurrence in Odo. It seems Pain didn't destroy the village as we had predicted. I saw all of Orochimaru's followers bowing to him. My guess is he took over the village. The normally calm Zetsu had a concerned look on his face. That is a very unsettling turn of events. I will inform Toby, but I still need you to continue to aim as planned. This may still be salvageable. Kabuto held his head down in fear. Konan can offer me some protection, I hope. I just saw him walk in and take over Otogakur in an hour, and there is no way I am fighting him. Zetsu shrugged at Kabuto's fear carelessly. Do your job and you'll survive. If you fail, then I will be sent to eat you. Zetsu's plant maw closed as he forged back into a nearby tree. Kabuto didn't take a second to think as he began to run southwest. His mind wandered as he ran. So, Pain has the rinnegan. Toba's plan may work, but I think he seriously underestimates what Pain is capable of. Uchiha pride, I suppose.